So, obesity is one of the biggest issues we're running into. It has a lot of actual causes, and yes, consuming too much is definitely part of the problem. Um, there's a couple different things that will instantly make things easier for you. First of all, stop eating processed foods. Processed foods, for the vast majority of the time, have chemicals that are in them that cause you to overeat. They are really bad chemically. So, like high fructose corn syrup has a much higher glycemic response than a lot of other foods. And that glycemic response raises sugars too quickly, forces too much insulin to come in, and pushes things over. So, real quick, we'll go through some stuff. One of the things that, and this probably is more of an issue if you're working with somebody a little bit closer. Um, the calorie system, you can't really use the calorie system. The calorie system is designed to keep you fat and sick and messed up. It was brought up by the medical system, and any system that tells you that sugar, fiber, and protein are all equal as far as gaining muscle or losing fat is absurd. So don't use that. Use a hormonally based macro system. So real quick on that, what ends up happening is you eat sugar, sugar comes in, blood sugar comes up, your body uses insulin to shove that sugar into storage because it doesn't want high blood sugar. It'll go in the muscles as glycogen, liver as glycogen, the rest is turned to fat. Protein activates a hormone called glucagon, which tells your body to use fat as a fuel source to carry on all the functions of the body, and then it will also start making sugar for your blood. So, and then fiber, by definition, never gets absorbed in the body. It never gets in the body. So you can't use a system that tells you that something that quickly turns to fat, something that burns fat, and something that literally never gets in your body in the first place are all equal. And the calorie system says these are all worth 4. So that's one of the big issues that people need to kind of recognize. But let's walk through some of the things that are really, really causing a lot of problems. One of the big things that we see, and this is why a lot of times being obese isn't necessarily the person's fault. So, for instance, if we have high stress, we've been eating toxic chemicals, additives, that type of thing, what ends up happening is that we have chronic inflammation. That chronic inflammation actually holds insulin levels higher. So the way that your body decides to shift over and start burning fat as a fuel source instead of utilizing sugar is what ends up happening is that what's supposed to happen is the sugar starts coming down in the blood and your body starts recognizing, hey, we're running out of sugar. We have to have sugar for the blood. And so what we're going to do is we're going to shift over to a different system. We're going to go from using sugar as the fuel source, which is called glycolytic ATP production. We're going to stop using that. We're going to start using fat. Well, as the sugars come down, the insulin levels drop that the body produces, and your body starts producing a hormone called glucagon. The glucagon shifts you over. You start burning fat as a primary fuel source. That's how that works. Now, here's what happens. This is the important part of this. As your body starts producing sugar through a process called gluconeogenesis, you have to be able to shut it off. And so the way that your body shuts it off is that as your sugars start to climb, they get to 110, 115, 120, your body goes, oh, that's enough. We don't need any more. And it produces insulin. The insulin then shuts off production of glucagon, and the body goes back to using sugar as its source for fuel. So the reason this is important is because if you have high fasting insulin or you have insulin resistance, your body always has a specific set amount of insulin in the blood. So it's always inhibiting your body's ability to use fat as a fuel source. And so that's one of the problems we get into. So the problem with that is if you're in that state, which a lot of you are, because you haven't had your fasting insulin pulled, because that's not something, that's how you fix a problem. So your medical doctors are definitely not going to pull fasting insulin because they don't want to fix the problem and want you to stay medicated forever. So what ends up happening is that if you start cutting back your intake, so if you're like, oh, cut your calories back, you'll lose weight, you will lose weight. But here's the problem. Because that insulin stays high, what ends up happening is that your body can't do anything about it. It can't really shift over to processing and utilizing fat as a fuel source. However, as that blood sugar starts to drop, your body goes in this immediate panic mode and it creates more sugar. It creates more sugar by taking apart your muscle tissue and using the proteins to go through a process called gluconeogenesis to raise your sugar levels back up. Well, the problem is that if you start doing this, it's really hard on the body. And so it doesn't burn much fat, but it tears apart your muscle tissue like crazy. This is why actually going through and utilizing weight as your marker of how well you're doing is a horrible idea. Because what did you lose? Did you lose fat? Did you lose muscle? Did you lose inflammatory water weight? Did you lose normal water weight? Did you lose organ tissue, bone? What did you lose? What was the weight you lost? Because a lot of times what we're seeing, at least what I'm seeing, is like for a while I've been seeing people coming in, usually women, and they're having problems standing up. And their doctor said, "Oh, this is a neurologic issue. Go see a neuro guy who can help you with neurologic function." So they come see me. And my first question when I start seeing this is, have you been on any GLP-1s? And when people go, "Oh yeah, I was on Ozempic, or I was on this, or I was on that." And what happened was that the doctor just put them on this. Again, we gave metabolic tools to the wrong people. They just put them on this and didn't talk about diet, exercise, hormones, anything else. And what ended up happening is that the weight they lost was muscle tissue. And you can just Google this, Ozempic and lean muscle mass loss, or, semaglutide and lean muscle mass loss. Because what ends up happening is that these people are losing so much muscle mass, they can't move around, they can't stand up anymore. Here's the problem with that. The way that your body utilizes fat as a fuel source is inside your muscle tissue. So if you lose your muscle tissue, you're going to lose your body's ability to actually burn fat to begin with. So most of your metabolic function happens inside your muscle tissue. So losing muscle tissue is the worst possible thing you can do. So this is also why a lot of times people will say, I hear this all the time. People came in, they're like, I cleaned up my diet and I really cut it back 20 pounds, and I was real proud of myself. And then it all came back. We added so much in. So that's the issue we came into, is that you've now lost this muscle tissue, and then you gained a bunch of fat back. And so losing that same amount again later is much more difficult. That's why losing the fat the second time is so much harder. This is also why when they talk about, with pregnant women, when they, whatever fat you don't lose between baby 1 and baby 2 is yours to keep. That's the thing that's been said a lot. Not necessarily true, but this is one of those reasons. So you have to start focusing on, okay, what am I trying to lose? I'm trying to lose fat, trying to lose inflammatory water weight, trying to lose those things. Okay, you're going to have to design a system or part of a system that actually focuses on the chemistry of breaking those things down. One of the easiest ways, and this is the other side of the calories thing, I always think is hilarious, because by now everybody's heard of, talked to, or maybe knows personally somebody who has gone on like a keto diet or a high protein diet, didn't change their calories at all, or even ate a little bit more calories and lost a bunch of fat. So the way that you have to do this chemically is you have to give your body the reason to burn the fat. So what ends up happening is if you cut out all of the insulin producing foods, these are going to be your sugars and your high glycemic foods, cut those out, and then allow your body to start using fat as a fuel source by giving your body fat. This is one of those things people use bulletproof coffee for, which is MCT oil, butter, and then coffee. What ends up happening is that when your body looks at it and goes, oh, we're getting in a significant amount of fat and no sugars, it will decide, okay, we're going to use the fat as a fuel source. Once it starts using fat as a fuel source, everything starts getting better. So here's the thing. If you walk through this properly, the first thing you got to do is check your hormones, make sure your hormones are where they're supposed to be. Your body's not going to do very well with high insulin and low testosterone. So get those two things pulled, checked, and put back where they're supposed to be. And by the way, the ranges, I keep seeing guys who come in here who are at 300 or 400 testosterone, and their doctor's like, you're fine, you're within the range. That's not true. You want to be between 800 and 1200. Women, you want to be between 80 and 250. On both of you guys on the testosterone, you want to be as high as you need to be to get everything to work, but no higher than that, right? So more is not necessarily better. So on that one, and then you want your insulin level, you want your fasting insulin somewhere between 5 and 9. That's going to be the best place for your fasting insulin. That'll allow your body to actually break these things down. The next thing is, like I said, cut out all the processed foods. The processing in these foods does a bunch of stuff to you that's wrong. One, most processing food is designed to sit on the shelf for longer. Well, how do you do that? Well, you make sure that the food doesn't get broken down by bacteria. Your body gets energy from things by breaking it down using bacteria. So if you're eating something that is designed to withstand bacteria or even kill bacteria, you're decreasing your gut flora every time you eat this processed food. So it's creating chronic inflammation, it's holding extra water weight, putting toxic chemicals in your body and killing your gut flora. 100% not what you want. So get off the processed foods, get on the real foods as much as you can. That in and of itself will help tremendously. Now, the next thing you want to do is get rid of this idea that you have to eat multiple times a day because that's what you do. Most of the people we work with will eat, 2 meals a day. I eat 1 meal a day. I've been doing it for 2 years now. And I have a lot of people who will opt to, do some fasting, do some 2-3 day fasting. It's fantastic, super healthy, easy to do. I would highly recommend that you, again, get your hormones set first, get your supplementation set second. Because one of the problems we get into with especially long-term fasting, if you're going to fast for a day, it's not that big of a deal. If you're going to fast for 2 or 3 days, you're going to make sure that your D3 is up, your B vitamins are up. You got to make sure that your body is, getting the chemicals it requires to actually function. By withholding the sugars and the fats and things like that produce the ATP, that's going to help your body create and utilize fat as a fuel source. It's going to help, reset muscle function, but you still have to have the B vitamins and things like that your body requires to run nutritionally and chemically. So make sure you maintain those, and you're fine. Like a lot of the people we work with, that's where we end up, and it ends up being really, really good. Like half the people I talk to, I'm like, what'd you have for breakfast? And they tell me, and I'm like, cool. All right, how hungry were you? And they're like, I wasn't that hungry, but it was breakfast, so I went ahead and ate. I'm like, all right, when do you eat lunch? Noon. Okay. We drop breakfast, and all of a sudden, everything starts coming into focus because that gives them a longer fasting window. Their body can actually break things down. It can process things easier, and it moves things through. So if we're looking at obesity and we're saying, okay, what can we do today? Again, if your doctor won't do it, because a lot of doctors won't do this, get a hold of us. We'll do it. This is how we do everything. Pull your fasting insulin, pull your testosterone and your free testosterone, make sure those are where they're supposed to be. Then cut out all of the processing of the food, then start whittling down the amount of sugars that you're consuming. And this will help the body to stop producing the insulin that then converts everything over to fat. So start there. Like I said, this is a much, much, much bigger conversation because fiber is fantastic. You can use fiber to block sugars. You can use fiber to do all sorts of things. But fiber, like I said, never gets absorbed in the body. It creates this viscous gel that doesn't get absorbed, but it also blocks other things from being absorbed. This is why if you look at, people say, well, drinking orange juice will make you fat. Eating an orange isn't as bad because the orange has the fiber, which blocks the absorption of those sugars. So when you start talking about eating fiber, and fiber is great, and lots of the high protein diets utilize fiber for all sorts of things, breads and things like that. The keto diets are doing this as well. The thing you have to recognize is that it blocks absorption of everything, and including supplementation, sometimes medication. So there's lots of things we got to kind of work through on that one. But fiber is fantastic because you can eat a decent amount of fiber. You get full, you feel satisfied. But again, those things never get in the body. And so you can get that satiation as you go through. So those two things, so hunger and being full, those are hormonal as well. So being full is leptin, and being hungry is ghrelin. And so there's other things you can do to block ghrelin so you're not hungry very much, and increase leptin function so you feel full all the time, so you feel satisfied. This is one of the things that GLP-1s do. Using GLP-1s properly is totally fine. I would always tell you, you want to use a GLP-1 in a system that is designed for using a GLP-1 for 6 to 10 weeks, and don't take it forever. What you want to do is you want to use that GLP-1 to help break this insulin resistance piece and force your body into fat burning a little bit more often. But you want to couple it again with where are your hormones at? What type of foods are you eating? How often are you eating them? So that's kind of where a lot of that plays in. So if you guys have done those things, great. Exercise is definitely a big part of it. You can add that in. But if you haven't done those, and if you haven't had somebody walk you through your diet and kind of show you how you can eat the cookie dough and the pecan pies and the pizzas and like all that stuff and still have it in a diet where you can lose weight, then get a hold of us and we'll walk you through it. So real quick on that, it's what's in the food. This is again why calories should not be looked at. Because if you look at a food and you're like, hey, look, this specific food has a decent amount of fiber, has a very low or zero glycemic function, and has a decent amount of protein and some fat in it, that meal will be looked at totally differently in the body than a meal that has high sugars. So you can take cakes and cookies and pies and things like that and change what's inside of them, change the ingredients, and all of a sudden they don't make you fat, they still taste good, and everything works out. And these aren't with artificial sweeteners, these are with herbs and things like that. So like stevia and monk fruit and allulose, which is one of my favorites. So check those things out. This is an easy way to get it done. You can have good food. You can be full. You don't have to starve yourself to get where you want to go and to be healthy. So if you guys have any questions, hit us up, questions@chalmerswellness.com, or give us a call. You can pillarsofwellness.com as well. Anyway, you guys have a good time. Thanks for your attention. Talk to you later.